The Deep Space Monitoring Station Omega floated in the vast emptiness between star systems, its sensors constantly scanning the cosmic void for anomalies. Commander Vex had overseen this outpost for 12 cycles, watching the endless dance of celestial bodies with practiced boredom. Nothing ever happened here until today. "Commander," Communications Officer Blake called out, his voice tight with concern. "We've detected an unidentified object approaching from the Sol system." Vex's 4 eyes swiveled toward the main display, where a small blip appeared against the starfield. The object was tiny, barely the size of a shuttle, but something about its trajectory made his spine ridges tingle with unease. "Analysis?" he demanded. Blake's claws clicked rapidly across his console. "It's moving at sublight speed, approximately 0.75 times the speed of light. Primitive fusion. Drive signatures. The construction appears to be metallic alloys. Basic electronics." The bridge fell silent. Every species in the known galaxy had achieved faster-than-light travel eons ago. Nobody used fusion drives anymore. Nobody civilized, anyway. "Could be a derelict," suggested Navigation Officer Kira, her tentacles writhing nervously. "Perhaps from one of the extinct civilizations." Vex studied the readouts more carefully. The probe, for that's clearly what it was, bore markings in an unknown script. But what disturbed him most was its trajectory. It wasn't wandering aimlessly through space like debris. It was following a deliberate course, carrying what appeared to be a message. "Sir," Blake whispered, his voice barely audible. "The probe's origin point, it's from the 3rd planet of the Sol system." The temperature on the bridge seemed to drop several degrees. Every being present knew the stories, the whispered legends passed down through generations of spacefaring races. Sol 3, Earth, was supposed to be uninhabited. The Galactic Council had classified it as a primitive world, home only to basic life forms that had barely crawled from their oceans. "That's impossible," Kira breathed. "The last survey was conducted 50 years ago. The dominant species was still banging rocks together." Vex felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. 50 years was nothing in galactic terms, barely a blink of an eye. Yet here was evidence that Earth's inhabitants had somehow achieved interplanetary flight. "Download everything," he ordered. "Full spectrum analysis. I want to know what that probe is carrying." As the data streams flowed across their screens, the crew of Station Omega discovered something that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The probe contained mathematical formulas, star charts, musical compositions, and images of the beings who had built it. But most disturbing of all were the technical specifications, blueprints for technologies that shouldn't exist. The humans of Earth had somehow leapfrogged several evolutionary stages. Their probe contained theoretical designs for quantum processors, gravitational field manipulators, and most shocking of all, preliminary schematics for what appeared to be a faster-than-light drive. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. Sarge's Tales Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. "Commander," Blake's voice cracked with fear. "There's something else. The probe is carrying biological samples and detailed genetic information about the human species." Vex's blood ran cold. He knew exactly what this meant. According to the ancient protocols established by the Galactic Council millions of years ago, any species that achieved interstellar capability while displaying rapid technological advancement was to be classified as a potential threat. The humans hadn't just built a probe. They had created a comprehensive introduction to their species and their capabilities. With trembling claws, Vex reached for the emergency communication array. There was only one course of action when faced with a potential Category 5 civilization emerging from a primitive world. He had to activate the Doomsday Protocol. The fate of the galaxy might depend on it. High Admiral Thane received the emergency transmission while reviewing fleet movements in the Andromeda Spiral. The ancient Calarian had seen 3 major galactic wars in his lifetime, but nothing had prepared him for the message crackling through the quantum communicator. Doomsday Protocol. "Activation request from Deep Space Station Omega," his aide, Lieutenant Rex, announced with barely controlled panic. "They're requesting immediate Council intervention for a Category 5 emergence. Thane's massive frame tensed. In his 800 years of service, the Doomsday Protocol had never been activated. It was a theoretical contingency created in the Dark Ages when the galaxy had nearly been consumed by the Ravager Wars. The protocol existed for one purpose: to prevent another species from achieving the technological capabilities that had almost destroyed all life in the galaxy. "Bring up the data stream," Thane commanded, his deep voice echoing through the command center. The holographic display materialized before him, showing the crude but functional probe drifting through space. As the analysis unfolded, Thane felt a growing sense of dread. The humans had accomplished in mere decades what most species required millennia to achieve. "Look at these power calculations," Rex whispered, pointing to the technical specifications. "Their fusion reactors are operating at 97% efficiency. Most of our current fleet can't match those numbers." Thane studied the biological data with growing alarm. The humans were remarkably adaptable, with redundant organ systems and an unusual capacity for rapid healing. But what truly disturbed him was their psychological profile. Unlike most galactic species, humans seem to thrive under pressure, becoming more creative and resourceful when faced with impossible odds. "Sir," Rex's voice grew quieter, "there's more. The probe contains evidence of their military capabilities." The display shifted to show images of human weapons systems. Primitive by galactic standards, but the underlying principles were sound. More concerning were the strategic documents that outlined human approaches to warfare. They didn't fight, like civilized species, with formal declarations and honorable combat. They employed deception, guerrilla tactics, and something they called asymmetric warfare. "They're apex predators," Thane murmured, recognizing the signs. "Look at their eye placement, binocular vision, forward-facing. They evolved as hunters." The implications were staggering. Most galactic species had evolved from prey animals or peaceful herbivores. They had developed technology as a means of protection and cooperation. Humans appeared to have developed it as a means of domination. "Admiral," Rex said urgently, "the Council is convening an emergency session. They want your recommendation within the hour." Thane closed his eyes and felt the weight of galactic civilization pressing down on him. The Doomsday Protocol had 3 possible responses to a Category 5 emergence: containment, integration, or elimination. Containment meant isolating the A species within their home system using gravitational barriers. Integration meant carefully introducing them to galactic society under strict supervision. Elimination meant exactly what it sounded like. "Show me their cultural transmissions again," he ordered. The probe had included examples of human art, music, and literature. Thane found himself fascinated despite his fear. Their music contained emotional complexities he had never encountered. Their visual art displayed a remarkable understanding of beauty and form. Most intriguing were their stories, tales of sacrifice, heroism, and an indomitable will to survive against impossible odds. "They're not monsters," he said quietly. "They're just different." "Sir, with respect," Rex replied, "different is exactly what makes them dangerous. The Ravagers were different too." Thane nodded grimly. The Ravagers had been the galaxy's greatest nightmare, a species of technological savants who had consumed entire star systems to fuel their expansion. It had taken the combined might of 1,000 civilizations to stop them, and even then, victory had come at a terrible cost. "Prepare a message to the Council," Thane said finally. "Tell them I'm recommending immediate deployment of the containment fleet to the Sol system. We need to establish a quarantine barrier before the humans develop faster-than-light travel." As Rex hurried to transmit the message, Thane continued studying the probe's data. Something about the humans troubled him beyond their obvious military potential. They possessed a quality he had rarely seen in galactic species: an absolute refusal to accept defeat. Even their children's stories were filled with characters who overcame impossible odds through sheer determination. What would happen when such a species encountered the barriers of quarantine? Most civilizations would accept their limitations and focus on perfecting their home system. But Thane suspected the humans would see the barriers as merely another challenge to overcome. He feared they might be right. Dr. Elena Ross stood before the massive assembly hall of the Galactic Council, her heart pounding as she faced representatives from over 3,000 civilizations. The human delegation had been hastily assembled after first contact protocols were activated, following the arrival of the alien containment fleet at the edge of Earth's solar system. Honored members of the Council, Elena began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix. We come before you not as conquerors or threats, but as neighbors seeking understanding. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many of the beings present had never seen a human before, and Elena knew their appearance was causing quite a stir. Unlike most galactic species, humans stood upright on two legs, their forward-facing eyes marking them as predators in the minds of prey-evolved civilizations. High Admiral Thane leaned forward from his position on the council dais. Dr. Ross, your species has been classified as a potential Category 5 threat. Your probe contained technological specifications that suggest rapid militaristic advancement. How do you respond to these charges? Elena had prepared for this question during the 3-day journey to the council station. Admiral, I understand your concerns. Yes, humans have developed advanced technologies quickly, but we've done so out of necessity, not aggression. Our world faces challenges that have forced us to innovate or perish. Explain these challenges, demanded Counselor Zara, a crystalline being whose voice chimed like broken glass. Elena activated the holographic projector she had brought from Earth. Images of hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and asteroid impacts filled the air above the assembly. Our planet is geologically active and sits in a region of space with frequent asteroid encounters. We developed space technology not to wage war, but to survive natural disasters that would destroy most civilizations. The assembly fell silent as they watched footage of humans rebuilding cities after devastating earthquakes, coordinating massive evacuation efforts during natural disasters, and working together to deflect potentially dangerous asteroids. Furthermore, Elena continued, our supposed military technologies are primarily defensive. We've learned that the universe is dangerous, and we've adapted accordingly. Counselor Blake, a tentacled being from the Outer Rim, spoke up. But your psychological profiles indicate aggression, competitiveness, and territorial behavior. These are classic signs of an expansionist species. Elena smiled sadly. We are competitive, yes, but that competition has driven us to achieve remarkable things. We compete to heal diseases, to explore the unknown, to create art and music that moves the soul. Our territorial instincts have evolved into protectiveness. We fight to defend those who cannot defend themselves. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed images of human rescue workers pulling survivors from collapsed buildings, doctors treating patients in war zones, and teachers working with children in refugee camps. Yes, we have capacity for violence, Elena admitted. But we also have an even greater capacity for compassion, sacrifice, and love. High Admiral Thane studied the human representative carefully. There was something in her eyes, a quality he had seen in the probe's cultural transmissions. She was afraid, surrounded by beings who could decide the fate of her entire species, yet she stood straight and spoke with conviction. Dr. Ross, he said slowly, the Council has reviewed your probe's contents extensively. We found something troubling in your literature and entertainment. Many of your stories involve humans fighting against overwhelming odds and somehow achieving victory. This suggests a dangerous overconfidence in your abilities. Elena's expression grew thoughtful. With respect, Admiral, I think you've misunderstood those stories. They're not about overconfidence. They're about hope. When humans face impossible situations, we don't fight because we believe we'll win. We fight because surrender is unthinkable. We fight because someone has to. She paused, looking around the vast assembly hall. Every species here has achieved wonders. You've built this incredible galactic civilization, created technologies beyond our imagination, established peace among thousands of different worlds. But I suspect that each of your species reached a point where they accepted their limitations. Humans haven't reached that point yet. Perhaps we never will. We look at the impossible and ask, why not? Instead of why. That's not arrogance. It's stubborn hope. Counselor Zara's crystalline form flickered with what Elena had learned indicated deep thought. And what if that stubborn hope leads you to challenge the natural order? What if you refuse to accept the boundaries we've established for the good of all? Elena met her gaze directly. Then judge us by our actions, not our potential. Give us a chance to prove that humans can be partners, not threats. We've sent you one small probe carrying our hopes and dreams. In return, you've sent a fleet to contain us. Which of us is acting aggressively? The question hung in the air like a challenge, and Elena knew she had either saved her species or doomed them. The Council would now decide whether humanity would be welcomed into the galactic community, imprisoned within their solar system, or eliminated as a threat. The vote would determine not just Earth's future, but the destiny of every human dream that reached toward the stars. The containment fleet's flagship, Eternal Vigilance, hung in space just beyond Pluto's orbit like a metallic moon. Captain Dex commanded one of the most powerful vessels in the galaxy, a ship capable of generating gravitational fields strong enough to collapse a star. Yet as he watched the primitive human spacecraft approaching his position, he felt an unfamiliar sensation. Uncertainty. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the human vessel is requesting permission to dock. They're transmitting friendship, protocols, and music?" Dex's mandibles clicked in confusion. Music? Yes, sir. Classical compositions, folk songs, and something they call jazz. The transmission includes a message stating that music is humanity's universal language of peace. The captain studied the approaching vessel through his view screen. It was laughably primitive by galactic standards, a converted mining ship with welded hull plates and jury-rigged life support systems. Yet something about its stubborn persistence reminded him of the stories his grandmother used to tell about the ancient Calarian explorers, who had first ventured beyond their homeworld in ships barely capable of reaching their nearest moon. "Sir," his communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a personal message from the human delegation leader. She's requesting an audience to discuss what she calls mutual understanding." Dex had been prepared for threats, demands, or desperate pleas. He had not been prepared for an invitation to conversation. Against all protocols, he found himself curious about these strange beings who sent music as a greeting and approached a vastly superior military force with requests for dialogue rather than surrender. Grant them docking privileges, he decided, but maintain full security protocols. Dr. Elena Ross stepped onto the flagship's bridge an hour later, accompanied by a small team of scientists and diplomats. Dex was struck immediately by their calm demeanor. They showed appropriate respect for his superior technology, but none of the fear or submission he expected from a contained species. "Captain Dex," Elena said, offering what he had learned was a human gesture of greeting called a handshake. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." "Dr. Ross," Dex replied carefully, "I must inform you that my orders are clear. Your species has been classified as a potential threat, and this fleet exists to prevent your expansion beyond your home system." Elena nodded sadly. "We understand your position, Captain, but we'd like to show you something that might change your perspective." She activated a portable holographic projector, and suddenly the bridge was filled with images of Earth. But these weren't the technical specifications or military capabilities that had alarmed the Council. These were scenes of daily human life. Children playing in parks, scientists collaborating on research projects, artists creating masterpieces, and families sharing meals together. "This is who we really are," Elena explained. "Yes, we're capable of violence when threatened. Yes, we're competitive and sometimes stubborn. But we're also capable of incredible beauty, selfless love, and boundless curiosity about the universe around us." Dex watched, fascinated, as the images showed humans of different races and cultures working together, sharing resources during disasters, and celebrating each other's achievements. It was unlike anything in his experience with other species. "Why are you showing me this?" he asked. "Because," Elena said quietly, "we believe that understanding prevents conflict. Your people see us as a threat because you don't truly know us. We see your containment as an act of aggression because we don't understand your fears." She gestured to his crew, who had gathered around the holographic display with obvious interest. "Look at your officers, Captain. They're curious about us, just as we're curious about you. That curiosity is what drives all progress, all discovery, all hope for a better future." Dex's tactical officer, a young Altarian named Kim, stepped forward, hesitantly. "Dr. Ross, may I ask about your music? The mathematical harmonies are unlike anything in our databases." Elena smiled warmly. Music is one of our greatest achievements. It allows us to communicate emotions that words cannot express. Would you like to hear something? At Kim's eager nod, Elena activated another file. The bridge filled with the haunting melody of a human composition, a piece that spoke of longing, loss, hope, and ultimately triumph over adversity. The alien crew stood transfixed, their various sensory organs processing the complex emotional layers woven into the sound. "We call this the Ninth Symphony," Elena explained. "It was composed by a man named Ludwig, who was almost completely deaf. He created one of our most beautiful pieces of music, despite never being able to hear it properly performed." Captain Dex felt something shift in his understanding. Here was the human essence distilled into pure form, the refusal to accept limitations, the transformation of suffering into beauty, the insistence that hope could triumph over any obstacle. "Dr. Ross," he said slowly, "I'm beginning to understand why the Council fears your species. You don't just refuse to accept defeat, you transform it into victory." "Captain," Elena replied, "that's not something to fear, it's something to celebrate. Imagine what we could accomplish together. Your wisdom and experience combined with our determination and creativity. The galaxy could become something magnificent." As Dex looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew, he saw the same thought, reflected in their expressions. For the first time in his career, he wondered if the Doomsday Protocol might be wrong. Perhaps some threats were actually opportunities in disguise. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been in deliberation. For 3 days, High Admiral Thane paced the corridors outside the main chamber, his ancient bones creaking with each step. Reports from Captain Dex had complicated what should have been a straightforward decision, and the Council found itself deeply divided, for the first time in centuries. "Admiral," Lieutenant Rex approached with the latest intelligence briefings. "The situation is escalating. 7 more human vessels have launched from Earth, all carrying what appear to be diplomatic missions to other sectors of the galaxy." Thane's eyes widened. "They're ignoring the containment?" "Not exactly, sir. They're requesting permission to establish contact with individual species outside the Council's authority. They're treating the containment as a temporary administrative procedure rather than a permanent barrier." The Admiral felt a familiar chill. This was exactly the kind of behavior that marked dangerous species. The refusal to accept established boundaries, the assumption that rules could be negotiated rather than obeyed. "Sir," Rex continued, "there's more. The human Dr. Ross has requested to address the Council again. She claims to have new information that could change the classification protocols." Thane nodded grimly. "Summon the senior staff. If the humans are escalating their activities, we need to consider activating Phase 2 of the Doomsday Protocol." Phase 2 meant moving from containment to active suppression, disabling human technology and forcing them back to pre-spaceflight capabilities. It was a drastic step, but the alternative might be facing another Ravager war. An hour later, Thane found himself once again facing Dr. Elena Ross in the Council chamber. But this time, she was not alone. Behind her stood representatives from dozens of species, beings who had never been part of the formal Council structure. "Honored Council members," Elena began, "I'd like to introduce you to the voices you haven't been hearing." One by one, the representatives stepped forward. There was Finn, a young Altarian scientist who had been working on quantum mechanics problems for decades without success. Mesa, an elderly crystalline philosopher who had devoted her life to questions about the nature of consciousness. Brooke, a tentacled engineer whose innovative designs had been repeatedly rejected by conservative council committees. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Councillor Zara. Elena smiled. "These are the members of your own species who think differently, who question established wisdom, who refuse to accept that impossible means impossible. They're the ones your societies have marginalized because they're too much like us." Finn stepped forward nervously. "Honored Council, Dr. Ross showed me human approaches to quantum field manipulation. In 3 days, we solved problems that had puzzled our best scientists for generations. Their methods are unorthodox, but they work." Mesa's crystalline form chimed softly. "The humans have philosophical concepts that challenge our most basic assumptions about consciousness and reality. Their questions have opened new avenues of thought that could revolutionize our understanding of existence itself. Brooks' tentacles writhed with excitement. Their engineering principles ignore conventional safety margins and achieve impossible efficiency ratings. They don't ask, what if it fails? They ask, how do we make it work? High Admiral Thane listened with growing unease as representative after representative testified to the remarkable insights they had gained from brief contact with human thinking. These were not primitive beings corrupted by dangerous ideas. These were respected members of galactic society who had found new inspiration in human approaches to old problems. Council members, Elena said, we're not asking you to change who you are. We're asking you to remember who you used to be, before you decided that stability was more important than growth, before you chose safety over discovery. She gestured to the mixed group of beings surrounding her. Every species in this galaxy was once like us, curious, determined, willing to take risks for the chance to achieve something greater. That's how you built this incredible civilization. But somewhere along the way, you stopped growing. Counselor Blake's tentacles curled defensively. We stopped growing because we learned wisdom. We learned that unchecked expansion and reckless innovation lead to disasters like the Ravager Wars. But what if, Elena asked quietly, the real disaster is the death of hope? What if the greatest threat to galactic civilization isn't species like us, but the gradual surrender of everything that made your civilizations great in the first place? She looked directly at High Admiral Thane. Admiral, you've studied our probe's contents more thoroughly than anyone. Tell me honestly, when you looked at our art, our music, our stories of impossible triumphs, what did you feel? Thane was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. I felt nostalgia. I remembered being young, believing that anything was possible. That feeling, Elena said, that's not dangerous. That's precious. It's the spark that creates wonders, that pushes boundaries, that transforms impossible dreams into reality. She spread her arms to encompass the entire assembly. We're not asking you to abandon your wisdom or ignore the lessons of the past. We're asking you to remember that the universe is vast and full of wonders still waiting to be discovered. Don't let fear of what might go wrong prevent you from seeing what could go right. The council chamber fell silent as thousands of beings contemplated words that challenged everything they had believed about safety, progress, and the proper role of civilization in an uncertain universe. The vote would come soon, but already, something fundamental had changed in the hearts of those who would decide humanity's fate. The final vote was scheduled for dawn of the fourth day, but sleep eluded High Admiral Thane as he walked through the observation decks of the council station. Through the massive transparent walls, he could see the lights of thousands of ships from every corner of the galaxy, all waiting to learn the fate of the human species. Admiral? Dr. Elena Ross's voice came from behind him. She stood alone in the corridor, her small frame dwarfed by the cosmic vista beyond the windows. Dr. Ross, shouldn't you be preparing for tomorrow's proceedings? She joined him at the observation window, gazing out at the assembled fleet. I've done everything I can. The rest is up to your people now. She paused, then added softly, I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For what? For listening. For being willing to question orders that you could have simply followed. That takes courage. Thane's laugh was bitter. Courage. Dr. Ross, I'm 800 years old. I've seen civilizations rise and fall, watched species destroy themselves through arrogance and recklessness. The Doomsday Protocol exists because beings like me learn to value survival over glory. Elena nodded thoughtfully. My species has a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Sometimes, Admiral, survival isn't the highest virtue. And sometimes, Thane replied, heroic gestures get everyone killed. They stood in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching the slow dance of starships in the void. Finally, Elena spoke again. Admiral, may I show you something? She produced a small device, a simple holographic projector of human manufacture. The image that appeared between them was of a blue-green world spinning slowly in space. Earth, she said simply. Our home. The planet was beautiful, Thane had to admit. swirling white clouds, vast blue oceans, and continents covered in green vegetation. But as he watched, the image shifted to show the planet's surface in more detail. "This is New York City," Elena explained as towering structures of metal and glass filled the display. 8 million humans live here, working together, creating art and music and literature, falling in love, raising children, dreaming of the future. The view shifted to other locations, vast agricultural regions feeding billions, research facilities pushing the boundaries of knowledge, hospitals healing the sick, schools teaching the young. "This is what you're protecting the galaxy from," Elena said quietly. "Farmers and teachers, artists and healers, children who dream of touching the stars." Thane felt something tighten in his chest. The humans weren't monsters or conquerors in these images. They were people, living lives remarkably similar to beings throughout the galaxy. "But your potential," he began. "Is exactly that," Elena interrupted. "Potential. Yes, we could become conquerors. We could also become the galaxy's greatest allies, its most dedicated explorers, its most passionate defenders of freedom and justice." She deactivated the projector and looked directly into his eyes. "Admiral, you have the power to decide which potential becomes reality. Judge us harshly, treat us as enemies, and you might create what you fear most. Trust us, work with us, and you might discover something wonderful." "The Council has already decided," Thane said, though his voice lacked conviction. "No," Elena replied with gentle certainty. "The Council has voted, but you haven't decided. Captain Dex told me about your reputation, Admiral. They say you've never followed an order you believed was wrong, no matter the cost to your career." Thane was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he activated his personal communicator. "This is High Admiral Thane to all fleet commanders. Effective immediately, the containment barrier around the Sol system is to be reconfigured from a blockade pattern to a protection perimeter." Elena's eyes widened. "Admiral, what are you doing?" "Something I should have done days ago," Thane replied. "I'm choosing to judge your species by what you are, not what you might become." He looked out at the assembled fleet, knowing that his orders would create chaos in the ranks, controversy in the Council, and possibly the end of his own career. "Dr. Ross," he said finally, "your people will have their chance to prove themselves. I pray to whatever gods may be listening that I'm making the right choice." Elena placed her small human hand on his massive arm. "Admiral, there are no guarantees in life. But I can promise you this. Humans don't forget those who show us kindness. If you're taking a risk on us, we'll spend the rest of our existence proving worthy of that trust." As the first light of dawn began to illuminate the Council station, Thane realized that he had already cast the most important vote of his long life. Now all that remained was to see whether hope could triumph over fear in the hearts of the galaxy's leaders. 1 year later, the Galactic Council convened for its annual assessment meeting. But the atmosphere was unlike anything in recorded history. The Great Chamber buzzed with excitement as representatives shared reports from across the galaxy, each more remarkable than the last. High Admiral Thane, now bearing the honorary title of Admiral Emeritus, following his controversial decision to modify the containment protocols, stood before the Assembly with Dr. Elena Ross at his side. "Honored Council members," Thane began. "1 year ago, we faced a decision that threatened to define our civilization for generations to come. Today, I stand before you to report on the consequences of choosing hope over fear." The main display activated, showing a star map of the galaxy with new routes highlighted in brilliant blue. These represent the exploration paths opened by joint human galactic expeditions in the past 12 months. Our combined fleets have discovered 17 new habitable worlds, mapped 43 previously unknown star systems, and established contact with 6 isolated civilizations that had been cut off from galactic society for millennia. Murmurs of amazement rippled through the Assembly. Such expansion had been unthinkable under the old protocols of cautious, limited exploration. Dr. Ross stepped forward to address the Council, but exploration is only part of the story. The real revolution has been in our collaborative research programs. The display shifted to show laboratories where humans worked alongside beings from dozens of different species. The Altarian Human Quantum Research Initiative has achieved breakthrough advances in faster-than-light communication. The Crystalline Human Consciousness Project has unlocked new understanding of artificial intelligence that could benefit every species in the galaxy. Counselor Zara, whose crystalline form now sparkled with patterns of blue and gold, colors that her species associated with joy, spoke up. Dr. Ross, the medical advances alone have been extraordinary. Human resilience combined with our healing technologies has resulted in treatments for diseases that have plagued the galaxy for centuries. Elena smiled. And that's just the beginning. Our engineering teams have developed more efficient star drives, our agricultural specialists are helping transform barren worlds into gardens, and our artists are creating new forms of beauty that inspire beings across the galaxy. Captain Dex, recently promoted to Admiral of the Joint Exploration Fleet, transmitted his report from the edge of the galaxy. Council members, I'm proud to report that the first mixed-species colony has been successfully established in the Outer Rim territories. Humans, Altarians, crystallines, and tentacled beings are working together to build something unprecedented, a truly integrated society, where differences are celebrated rather than feared. High Admiral Thane nodded with satisfaction. The integration has not been without challenges. Human enthusiasm sometimes clashes with established protocols. Their tendency to question authority has disrupted several traditional hierarchies. Their refusal to accept impossible as an answer has forced us to reconsider fundamental assumptions about physics, philosophy, and social organization. He paused, looking around the chamber at faces that showed wonder rather than concern. But every challenge has become an opportunity for growth. Every disruption has led to innovation. Every question has opened new avenues of discovery. Elena activated a final holographic display. Images of children from a dozen different species playing together in the Gardens of New Harmony, the first integrated colony. Human children with their forward-facing eyes ran alongside Altarian, youngsters with their iridescent feathers, while crystalline offspring sparkled with laughter, and tentacled youth wrapped their appendages around new friends in gestures of affection. This, Elena said quietly, is the future we've chosen together. Not human dominance or galactic submission, but partnership. Not the conquest of the unknown, but the celebration of discovery. Not the triumph of one species, but the elevation of all. Counselor Blake, whose conservative stance had initially opposed human integration, rose to speak. Dr. Ross, Admiral Thane, I must confess that my fears about human unpredictability were well-founded. Your species has indeed disrupted our galaxy. The chamber fell silent, tension crackling in the air. Blake's tentacles curved upward, and what Elena had learned was a smile. You've disrupted our complacency, our limitations, our acceptance of good enough. You've reminded us that the universe is vast and full of wonders, and that the greatest tragedy would be to stop reaching for them. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. The Doomsday Protocol was officially retired, replaced by the Partnership Accords, a new framework for welcoming emerging civilizations with guidance rather than fear. As the session ended, and beings from across the galaxy began planning their next joint ventures, Elena found herself standing once again beside Admiral Thane at the observation windows. Any regrets, Admiral? She asked. Thane watched as human ships joined the galactic fleet for their next mission of exploration and discovery. Only one, Dr. Ross. I regret that it took us so long to understand that the greatest danger to any civilization isn't external threats, it's the death of dreams. Elena smiled as she watched the mixed fleet disappear into the depths of space, carrying the hopes and dreams of dozens of species toward whatever wonders awaited among the stars. Then here's to keeping our dreams alive, Admiral. All of them, together. The galaxy had found its future, and it was brighter than anyone had dared to imagine.